Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you to everyone for being here today. It is an honor to be here. I'd also like to thank Insurtech Hub, Acer Pro, and the wonderful city of Istanbul. It is phenomenal to be here. So I am Jay Weintraub. I am the co-founder and CEO of Insurtech Connect. Insurtech Connect is the world's largest gathering for insurance innovation and transformation. In 2018, we had 5,500 attendees to our Las Vegas event. And this year, we're expecting somewhere around 7,000 from more than 60 countries. And it's been a unique platform for us to sort of view the changes that are taking place in this amazing industry. And so today, I'm going to get to share with you some of the things that we have seen. And one of them is apparently the big, not the small green button, not that one, big green button. Fantastic. So I think it is safe to say that we are indeed in a new world. For those that aren't familiar with this picture, this is San Francisco and the streets of San Francisco. And it's always interesting how mobility will change everything and how we operate. This is one of the many unicorns in the great city of San Francisco, Lime Scooter. It is a fascinating, I don't know if people have used it, but it's essentially pick up a scooter, ride around, and then leave it in the middle of the street. All sorts of wonderful liability issues exist as a chance. And so here you can say this is a community online and somebody asking, who is underwriting these companies? So we know that we're in a new insurance world, but the real question is, what kind of insurance world is it? How do we describe the state that we are operating in today? And I think there's two ways. One is for those that are fans of wrestling, which I did not expect this audience to necessarily be one of them. Did not think that Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant were necessarily the most popular here, but I may continue with this just because I love it so much. But on the one hand, we have insurance, which has historically been this giant force, and another, this attractive thing. And maybe putting it another way that is not having to do with American wrestling is to look at it in these two ways that we have to operate today. If we look at, on the one hand, we have Bill Gates, and I think this is an immensely accurate quote, and he says, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. And it's especially true for us because we know the change is happening, we feel it today, but it's hard to know where are we in this cycle, and is this change actually a change that we have to act upon, or is the world really going to be different? And the other way to think about it, which is I think also very true and has led to a lot of the disruption concerns, is the quote from Jeff Bezos, who says that your margin is my opportunity. And if there's one thing that startups and digital companies love to do, it's to find big fragmented industries that produce lots and lots of money. That is insurance. So one question that we have been thinking about is, what in the cycle? Is this really a wave? Is it a fad? Where are we? And this is a picture for those that aren't familiar of the California Gold Rush, which is sort of, kind of the sort of the prototype of, let's rush in, but it didn't last. So I think one way that we like to think about it, and have asked ourselves, is this 1999 or is this 2019? And I won't necessarily go through all of these, but if you look at the things, I think what makes it challenging is that they are exactly the same as it was in 1999 as it is in 2019. So it's very easy to sort of dismiss a lot of what we're seeing in insurance and insurtech as potentially just a fad. But here are some of the reasons why I think this is not like 1999 and that this is enduring. And I think we wouldn't be here if it was just a fad. So we know that it's enduring. So instead, let's take a look at some of the innovations that have happened in the last, sort of 7 or 8 years since Insurtech has become, from a word to a movement. So I look at some of the companies here and I tried to take almost a yearbook style thought, and that's why the class of 2011 to 2014 is sort of, we look at the companies that started in this era, and I describe the era as you have entrepreneurs saying, I want to do something in insurance, and you have everybody else saying, that was talking to the entrepreneur going, insurance, really? And the answer is yes. So if we look back at this period, it is not surprising that a lot of the companies were really focused on distribution. This was when the internet was sort of proving itself as a channel, but at the same time, some of the things that we even see today, and I think we saw it with some of the startup demos, is this is where we saw earlier automation, we saw companies like Captricity or Hyperscience. We started to see people saying, wait, the cloud is a better way. Why aren't we having the core systems in the cloud? And probably most importantly, in terms of what gave Insurtech its name, Insurtech, was the idea of people saying, why are the products one size fits all? Why aren't we trying to break the product and deliver it differently? Now, if we think about in the last 3 or 4 years, this is where it has, I describe this period as something that we call making buzzwords real. So this is about the time when the real money has started to flow in the ecosystem, and the real question was, what are people going to build? And more importantly, it's prove it to me, has been, I think, what we're seeing. Is show me that this works and it's going to change things. I think some of the things that I get most excited about are, I'll look at the small commercial as a good example. A company in the US called Bold Penguin is really an exchange, and it's saying, how do we help sort of make quote to bind faster? And more interestingly, what happens if you are a carrier, a broker, and you can't place a policy with the people that you're issued? Why isn't there an efficient marketplace? Or I'll take an example like Ladder Life. And Ladder Life is a digital sort of direct-to-consumer life insurer. But more interestingly, they said, well, wait a second, how do we use life in new ways? And one of them is that, at least in the US, in terms of an insurance gap, life is a big problem. There are not enough people that have life, and it's really hard to get life consumers. Both Ladder and Fabric are trying to solve that, to say, how do we expose you to life in a way that you're not thinking? So in the case of Ladder, in the US, the student debt happens to be a huge issue. It's a multi-trillion-dollar problem, and it's also one that people think may lead to a financial crisis of its own. Well, there happens to be one of the big SoFi, big financial, sort of student debt, refinance institutions. And what they realized is that in the US, student debt can actually transfer, it doesn't just go away if something happens to you. So Ladder said, wait a second, why don't we create a term life product that covers the amount of your student loan debt? So if you owe $100,000, why not buy term life? And if something happens to the term to you, your student debt is paid off. But as you pay down your student debt, you don't want that 100,000, you might want 50,000 or 20,000. But that's not how insurance is made. It doesn't automatically ratchet down. It would mean new tests, new everything. And so when I think about why insurance and Insurtech is super interesting, it's because people are looking at insurance and not saying, oh, we need to do something digital to reach the consumer. They're saying, how do we use this amazing product to make people's lives better? And every single one of these in some capacity has that. So here, as much as I would love to go through every single example, I thought what I would do, though, is at least share with you kind of over the past 7 or 8 years, what are we really seeing? What are some of the things that Insurtech as a whole, I think, can be summarized by? Some of the ones that I think are obviously you didn't exist before today, meaning in this sort of era. You didn't have stop and start insurance. A company here, Hugo, really interesting, talking about the underinsured and how do you get people in the underinsured markets to get their needs. Well, it turns out in countries where there's a lot of immigrants, in the US, I shouldn't say countries, in cities, a lot of people will buy insurance and then they'll drop it. And what they realized is that how do you solve this problem when people don't want to buy it in, say, 6-month chunks? So again, there's a lot of great things where people say, insurance is needed, coverage is needed. How do we change the product or change the model to meet the demands of the consumer? And of all of these things, when I look back at sort of Insurtech and what it's doing for the industry, one of the things that I get most excited about is the talent. We have thousands of amazing people that today are in insurance and who never would have guessed it. And so as much as I think the world is getting better and the products are getting better, it's the fact that we have a whole new generation of professionals that wouldn't have thought about insurance had Insurtech not come to be. And I think one of the things that certainly if we looked at 2014, 2015, the real fear, and to some degree today, the real fear has been disruption. And there's a lot of talk about disruption. And yes, it is absolutely true that there's going to be a digital-only, digital-first one or two. But if we think about for every Amazon, how many actual stores are there? The same is going to be true in insurance. So disruptors are going to continue to sort of push us as the industry to build better. But it's really, I think, the thing that no one really thought about was it's about enablement. And I think, again, that's what makes it, I'm glad that's the case because of conversations like today can happen. If it was just about disruption, there wouldn't be everyone talking in the halls, there wouldn't be these great stands, and there wouldn't be ways to work together. It would be sort of, very much one against the other. So I'm really happy that this is kind of what we're seeing. And so another way to sort of look at it is, and they talked this morning, or this afternoon I should say, about the amount of money on the panel. But it's been $12.5 billion that's invested, and it's a trend that should only continue. And this is just another way to sort of look at how that money is being spent. We saw if it was being disruptors versus enablers, and in this chart we see kind of where are the Insurtechs really focusing. So if I had to describe what we're seeing in the last 7 or 8 years, there's no shortage of companies, right? There's no shortage of competitors, but the jury is still out. There are many amazing businesses out there, but there's a shortage, I would say, of definitive success stories for now. So as we think, kind of about the future, I thought I might, sort of conclude by saying, what are the things that we are looking at as we progress both in 2019 and beyond? So first, I thought I would say, what is it that we use as our operating assumptions? So when we look at the world of insurance, here are sort of 3 things that we think, sort of hold to be true and will continue to be true. And it's really this idea that if it can be written directly, it's going to be. And if you can sell it online, it will be. And that eventually, everything will be direct and online. Now, this is sort of like saying cars will drive themselves. This is not happening today, but we find it to be a good operating paradigm to assume it's going to be the case, because that pushes us to say, well, if this is going to happen, should we continue to act the way we are today? But one great thing about this is that even though things may be direct and digital, it doesn't take away the role of the broker, because ultimately it's that domain expertise that's going to be needed, because even if you can buy something online, you're going to need to help in terms of what to buy. So what are the things that we are watching, going on right now? So here's another reference. If you're staring at this and you're not a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's Captain America, it's Iron Man, and it's 2 reasons. I actually do like superhero movies. And the second reason is that I actually think of the insurance industry as superheroes. I think it's not often that we are compared to superheroes, but I think it's fair. If we think about flying cars, going to space, sitting in this building today, literally nothing would be possible if it weren't for insurance. So I do think it's appropriate every once in a while for us to realize that this amazing industry makes risks and life and innovation, every innovation, possible. Now, what are we really watching instead of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? One thing we're watching, and this is a US graph, is the labor market. So today, at least in the US, this is the first time where the people who are actively seeking jobs is actually lower than the amount of jobs that are open. It's an interesting statistic. It speaks to the state of, is there a recession imminent or not? That, kind of what has this recovery, sort of global recovery been like? And it also speaks to sort of the overall shortage and what does it mean to wages. It's a statistic that I think there's a lot of depth buried into it, but it's one that, again, sort of like we're following. Another one that we're following is this idea of resiliency. We live in a world now where the incident of disasters is increasing in frequency and severity. And while it's not the most fun topic to talk about, it is at the very core a lot of what insurance covers. So as the world changes in many ways, including what happens to property and to our lives and to disruptions, I think it's also a great opportunity for Insurtech to solve, but it is something that is going to continue to hurt the bottom lines of insurers in ways that we can't and wouldn't have predicted, say, 20 years ago when doing the forecasts. The third thing that we're watching is really distribution. So there's been a lot of talk, and there will always be a lot of talk about going to digital. But you've already heard me say that I believe heavily in the broker channel, but I'm really concerned about the broker channel. And my concern is, and at least from the US standpoint, In the US, there's a lot of consolidation. It's been a huge wave of capital coming in, buying up a lot of shops, and forming mega conglomerates. And while it doesn't sound bad, the real issue is it's about how do you have a level playing field? How do you have the right technology and the right tools so that if you're a broker, you can offer the coverage and help assess the client's needs and do it fast? Because as everyone will say, the client's expectations for on-demand, it's not just for consumers, it's for businesses as well. And so if there is this not well-funded, not well-served, sort of tier of brokers, I get concerned about how, we, kind of enable the consumers and survive. And probably the last thing that we're watching, among many other things, is the whole innovation ecosystem. Probably one of the most, I'd say exciting things to happen besides, sort of all of the corporate venture capital that's coming in, is the fact that we have an immense and diverse ecosystem, including Insurtech Hub, of how do we connect insurers, sort of with the companies that are trying to change. The challenge is that it's immensely, sort of fragmented, and for many insurers, it means you don't know where to put your money, and at some point, you may try a proof of concept, and then what ends up happening is you kind of end up with fatigue. So we're sort of watching this because it's critical that the startups, and as people are referring to now later stage, the scale-ups, how do they continue to connect with insurers so that insurers, sort of don't feel the ultimate fatigue. And then for us, what is it that we are ultimately trying to do with Insurtech Connect? We're just trying to connect the world and bring a bridge. Our entire focus is on convening and the power that happens. We see it today when people get together in a room, when people talk, that's where the magic happens. That's how, we as people improve, how insurance improves, society improves, and it's what our mission is all about. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. It has been an absolute honor to be here.